My name is Kimberly Blackrincan. I'd like to welcome our guests that we have here in the Ignite Hub and welcome to our guests that are online. Um, Welcome to our October Future of Tech Lunch and Learn, and we have an exciting topic. We have an organization, eLivestock Global, that is going to talk about how they utilize technology to solve some of our world problems. Hello. Okay, it works. Oh, okay. Yes, I have to talk, and then you're on, Chris. Okay. So I'm very excited about today's session event because we know that technology touches all of our lives, right? So we've spent a lot of time talking about AI and VR and a lot of different types of technology. And so one of the missions that we have here at the Hub is making sure that we're being inclusive of how technology touches all of our lives in lots of different ways. So I'm very excited about today's session. Something also unique about today's session is that two of our guest speakers are joining us from international locations. One of them is joining from Switzerland, and the other one is joining us from Zimbabwe. Oh, thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Max. So the reason I bring that up is because the Hub is a high flex space, and we're using our own technology to be able to bring quality guest speakers from you that are not just located here in Montgomery County, but on an international level. So without further ado, I do want to thank Verizon for their sponsorship of our guest speaker series. For our guests that are in person, of course, we have lunch after the session. And just again, thank you to Verizon for supporting us to provide this type of programming to the community. I'm going to jump into introductions of our guest speaker. So we have three, as I mentioned. One is here in person, and that is Chris Light. He is a seasoned executive, serial entrepreneur, technologist, innovator, Web3 AI, and blockchain enthusiast with 25 years plus of experience. He is the co-founder at eLivestock Global. Officially launched in 2021, eLivestock Global has received global press coverage, including The Economist. It has also won Best Blockchain Solution in Africa in 2001. Chris Light has a master's degree from Boston University and has a double major, double degree from the University of Maryland, and has completed blockchain certificate coursework at both MIT and UC Berkeley. He is well known in the technology, entrepreneurial, blockchain, and global development communities. He's undertaken technology activities worldwide, including as an information technology advisor for the U.S. Presidential Initiative to End Hunger in Africa. His work has been recognized at the White House and embassy level for the Department of State, together with the administrator level for USAID. He served 3 years as a co-chair for ICT 4D/digital development for the Society of International Development United States, including serving twice as an innovation judge for their annual conference. His work with blockchain supply and value chains has been featured by both the MIT and the LSE. He won the Innovation Award at the 2002 SID US Annual Conference for eLivestock Traceability Solution and serves as a country ambassador for the Global Business Blockchain Council. Wow, Chris, welcome to the Ignite Hub. We're honored to have you here. Thank you. Our next speaker is Max Makavise. He is a trained accountant who has been active in the livestock sector for over 22 years. Max entered the Zimbabwean animal health industry in 1997, and in 2003, he founded Makera Cattle Company, of which he is still a director. His strong interest in tech and the need for data to accomplish sustainability led him to co-found eLivestock Global with Chris Light in 2021. Max is involved in many areas of the cattle industry and has embarked on many programs involving rural communities where the future of Africa's cattle lies. These works revolve around genetic improvement, training, product supply, and traceability. This work has involved partnering with the donor community, government, as well as other private sector players. In 2018, recognizing the need to take a more global position on cattle, Max joined the Southern African Regional Roundtable for Sustainable Beef and current vice chairman, which is part of the Global Roundtable for the sustainable beef. This has led to Max interacting with cattle players from all over the planet in the adoption of sustainable beef. With a strong interest in tech and the need for data to accomplish sustainability, the founding of eLivestock Global was the next logical step. Welcome, Max. We're so glad that you're here from Zimbabwe. Thank you. And our final guest that we have, Melissa Eng. She is the founding board member at eLivestock Global. Growing up on her family's farm led Melissa to develop a passion for agriculture, empowering farmers and rural development at an early age. Melissa's journey took her to live on 4 different continents and landed her in the food service industry, where she worked for various manufacturers as a global key accountant executive for over 20 years. The 3 pillars of her experience are international business development, global supply chain, and new product innovation. eLivestock Global ticks all her driving boxes: innovation, agriculture, and food service global supply chain. She's passionate about food safety and using innovative approaches to take food from farm to table and distributing the fruits of the labor evenly throughout the supply chain. Melissa was so smitten with Alvis, eLivestock Global's test bull that you may have seen on Twitter and our website, that she coerced the rest of the team to allow her to launch a test pilot project at her family's homestead. She honed these negotiation skills while studying for her master's in business at Boston University and has a bachelor in international relations with economics from the University of Wisconsin. She currently resides in Switzerland with her husband. Wow, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks again for waving in Switzerland. We have a fantastic guest speakers today. So I'm going to pass it over to Chris, who's going to get us started, and then we'll hear from all of our guest speakers. So Chris, you're on. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this on? Yeah. Yeah, if you can get the presentation. Gosh, what a wonderful introduction. Melissa's messaging me and telling me how thrilled she is. So I'm Chris Light. I'm one of the co-founders at eLivestock Global. How did we start? Well, if you go to the next slide, we're a social enterprise, which means we're more of an attempt to be like a B Corp. Why is traceability important, and why did we pilot in Zimbabwe? Well, there was an outbreak of January disease, which is a tick-borne disease that killed 50,000 cattle. It was actually somewhat over 50,000. No one knows the exact number. And there was no good system in place to troubleshoot it. So that became our pilot case to basically look at that and see could we design a system that could be used to stop these kind of outbreaks from happening in the future. So that was sort of our genesis in 2018. As Melissa said, next slide. There we go. Okay, how did we get here? In 2019, I've worked in tech and international development, global development for a while. I got into technology when it was when you could get in if you were interested before you need all the certifications and so on. And I've been good at it, and I've always looked at it from a business perspective. So they let me get away with a lot of stuff. So I wound up. This is me giving a lightning talk on blockchain in the summer of 2019. I didn't know much about blockchain, and I think somebody misunderstood. I heard lightning talk, and they said, "Oh yeah, on blockchain," and so I had to rush out and learn that blockchain is a lot more than just Bitcoin, and the whole purpose of this was to give lightning talks on emerging tech areas, which blockchain very much was in 2019. To give people ideas for projects and ways to change outcomes. So at the same time, Max and I have known each other for a number of years, but about the same time that I was doing that, he was actually in the middle part of America, touring Hamburger University and other. He'll get into more detail, but this picture of him here is getting fitted for a cowboy hat. I'm typically a bit more of a dress-up kind, but yeah, Max, as I say, Max is a rancher. He wears a cowboy hat. So I'm more of the technologist. So next slide. So we had to build a the stuff that we want to do, QR codes are much more ubiquitous than they were a couple of years ago. But at the time, we had to build our own sort of tag to be used for our system, and we used an ISO standard for identification. Basically, we gave cattle a health record and tied it to an ID. It's basically a simplified version of what a lot of human healthcare systems are based on. But we had to design our own tag. And then if you look at the picture on the left, that's the typical system that's in deployment. It's more close read. We went with a further read range. By the time we started piloting a solution, of course, COVID had happened, so we were in lockdown. So we were lucky enough to find a reader company that had just released a reader for retail. There wasn't much retail going on during lockdown, so we repurposed the reader for our system. And as you can see on the right, lower right-hand side, our system works a lot further away, up to 50 feet instead of just a couple of inches. So it's a lot easier for doing things like inventory. You don't have to be as close to the animal. So we've had some great discussions in Africa about that because they have animals that you don't want to be too close to. So there may be some spin-offs coming from that. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we used a smarter tag. If you click through there's our scanner, and then of course there's an app for everything. So we created a Any Livestock Global app. Next slide, please. Yeah, as Melissa said, one of the things we learned very early on in the process is if you do anything to a live animal, it's very hard not to upset. There are a lot of animal lovers out there. So we there was an artisan in Zimbabwe who created this little wireframe cow that we've called Elvis, and we gave him, I think 18 is the year that Elvis was born, so we gave him tag number 18 in our system. So we use him for a lot of our demos and stuff. So yeah, as we gave a smallholder artist some work, and then also have a way to do demos without you needing to use real cows. So people want to know the story of their food, but they don't necessarily want to know all the nitty gritty. So next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things we discovered with our system is that a well-traced, and we knew this, a well-traced animal can be worth up to $5,200 more per head, and that's a big deal for farmers who sometimes have very lean margins. Many of you have heard of Carfax, where an accident-free and well-maintained vehicle is worth more. Well, we say we're like Cowfax, which is that a well cared for animal is worth more and is actually better for the environment. So next slide, please. So Africa is really interesting. I'm not gonna steal too much of Max's thunder, but 20% of the world's livestock are in Africa. So there, because of currencies and various reasons, a lot of people still have small farms. Because currencies aren't worth very much, they would put their money into their farms instead of into like banks or keeping it in cash. And as a result, their largest single asset is livestock. And actually it's interesting, if you look at the Latin word for cattle, if you trace it far enough back, it gets to capital. So it's sort of the origin of wealth is in livestock. So that's we're partnering with the World Bank on unlocking the collateralizing, unlocking the value of the 2 to 3 cows that the average smallholder farmer has, which is, it's like money that they had but they couldn't access easily without selling it. So next slide. Oh yeah, and actually, she covered a lot of this. If you can just keep moving through it, we're piloting in additional countries. To give you a frame of reference, the U.S. has about 100 million cattle. If you do North America, including Canada and Mexico, it's about 140 million. But Africa has 250 million, so it's really the cradle of cattle in Africa. But Max will get more into that. But anyway, we've added patents. It was great working with the engineering school at Maryland to create a tag, but we're adding technology patents, which if you're a startup is a big deal because they have value. Next, yeah, we won that award, and then we won another award. So next slide, please. Yeah, here's some of the places we've been published. The Economist actually covered our collateralization because in Zimbabwe they're using livestock as pension assets. This hasn't been able. No other system has done this yet because you have to be able to have almost real-time information. So, but that's to be able to invest pension funds into livestock is a move. It's move forward. Yeah. So I'm a traditional sort of tech guy, worked in fintech, but we're getting into some interesting, we get published in a lot of interesting places like CoinGeek and Ledger, and we went down the Web3 crypto rabbit holes a little bit, but we also, we're still very much working with the University of Maryland, and we got to present our system. MIT had an Africa Innovation event in 2022. We went up there for that, and as was said, the London School of Economics kept us as a case study, and then the GW has also used us as a case study. So next slide, please. Yeah, here's our founding team, and then we partnered. We started with using MasterCard technology, and then Caterpillar has a ruggedized phone, so we used those, and we worked with Avery Dennison and Merck, and then those are some of the companies that our team has experience with. Next slide. Yep. Okay. As we started very small, so if you look at the top picture in the right-hand corner, it's sort of Elvis. That's the one, and then we do the how's it going. We had the same artisan create a bunch of little small wireframe animals to say this is Elvis and his family. So anyway. Thank you. We can show the video and then over to Max.
I've worked in Zimbabwe's cattle industry for over 22 years, and it's proven difficult, if not impossible, to trace ownership sometimes. But not only that, but the health of an animal. It's hard to know whether it's been grazing, whether it's had vaccinations, or its general health over its life. This limits the amount of money the farmer's product can demand at the market. eLivestock is a traceable and trustless system that allows any buyer or seller to verify an animal's history, and within seconds, come up with a price. It also enables scientists and officials to monitor the movement of cattle nationwide, limiting the spread of disease and leading to a much healthier national herd. Many farmers in Zimbabwe are already benefiting from eLivestock, resulting in more money in their pockets, their families, and their communities. The ripple effects are incredible. And that's just the beginning. Our system, which works both online and offline on any smartphone, is a way to onboard the unbanked and lead to financial inclusion. Soon, farmers will be able to secure loans using eLivestock, with their cattle being used as collateral. Some of these loans will undoubtedly pay school fees, build community facilities, and even start businesses. Our ambition reaches beyond Zimbabwe, beyond Africa. This is truly a global solution, which is why we needed to partner with a product that wouldn't stifle our ambition. That's what drew us to Enchain. I truly believe that they share our values and care about our mission.
Working with Chris, Max, and eLivestock is a perfect demonstration of the power of blockchain as utility. It enhances social goods and solves real-world problems. Enchain was rapidly able to integrate with eLivestock infrastructures, and blockchain provide data integrity, proving in an indisputable way the history of vaccination and treatment of each animal. In the field, just by scanning an animal here tag, you can have access to the entire record of vaccination and treatments. It's very difficult to emphasize how life-changing it is for the people and the farmers, and the positive impact it has on their family and the community. Today, it's thousands of farmers, and with the limitless scalability of our protocols, soon it will be millions of farmers. and all while decreasing the cost as we scale.
I look out today at the prosperity here in London, and I see glimpses of my country's future. I see Harare, Zimbabwe, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I see Lusaka, Zambia, Maputo, Mozambique. I see Nairobi, Kenya. I see a future that we, eLivestock and Enchain, are enabling today. So, passports for cars? What a beautifully crazy idea.
Max?
Yeah, thanks for watching me in my acting phase. Hollywood's not sending me any scripts, so don't worry about that. I'm coming to you from Zimbabwe. One of the things in Chris's slide, you saw some elephants and some little calves. I'm on a ranch which is 135,000 acres currently, and we've got 7,500 cattle here, and those cattle are mixing with wildlife. We have no internal fences. We practice holistic management in terms of looking after our cattle. And the beauty is all our cattle on the eLivestock system. Now, whilst I can sit here on a large scale, highly efficient corporate farm, we've got to think about the smaller people. You know, Africa has 20% of the world's cattle population, as Chris has rightly said. But of that 20%, you're probably looking at 99.9% being in the hands of the smallholder farmer. And these are the guys that have been left behind. Most software systems are developed in terms of the larger scale farmer, and they're not taking the smaller holder farmer into consideration. So let's start from the bottom up. But what is it that's important about cattle? Cattle have been used as idle assets within the smallholder value chain for a long period of time, and their unique selling point has been eroded. They're sold in times of need and times of hardship. What we wanted to do is develop something that would increase the value of the farmer's cattle, whether he used the app or not, because his animals would be in the database. The reason for that being there are certain aggregation points where all animals go through for their weekly or twice a month dipping during the dry season. And so with that being in mind, we said, let's do something to try and make sure all the cattle are accounted for. Now, when doing that, it's not about, I'm not trying to sell a product, I'm trying to sell the concept. The concept is, how do you bring 1 billion people into the system? 1 billion people have been left behind. 1 billion people who don't have access to technology, access to data, access to Wi-Fi/mobile services. And this was one of the ways we, think that this can be done, because what it includes is it includes working online and offline. So just put my glasses on. Some of the problems we face in Africa is ownership of cattle. We can't accurately tell you how many cattle there are in any given place because there's no real system of recognizing those cattle. And by putting in a system whereby you're accounting for them, you can have a better idea of where these cattle are going. We record life events of these cattle. So when they're dipped, when they have an illness, when they're vaccinated, geolocating every time they're scanned. So what you end up with is a moving target of an animal over the space of its life. And for that sort of level of traceability, the farmers will also be able to get an idea of price discovery, but also make more money from their cattle. And also, this is one which I've just been thinking, is things like AI introduced into systems. Once you have enough data, you have the ability for a machine to start predicting. And things like big outbreaks of diseases where you can have 50 to 100,000 animals wiped off the face of this earth, you can pick them up quickly. It can predict where the next event will be based on the illnesses that are being put into the system. So I'm not going to go much further than that. I think basically, I think I've given you a good idea of what the system is. But I think at the heart of everything is the people. If you've got 1 billion people, if you can bring those 1 billion people to the party, you're creating a system that will benefit them. If you can't bring those people to the party, they're not included, they're left out. And as such, we'll be sitting in Africa waiting for the next check from US aid to help the people. Self-sufficiency is the name of the game. And thank you for that. I'm good.
Melissa?
Sorry, I just had to unmute there. So I just wanted to thank the Hub for sponsoring, putting on this event, and also sending the questions. I thought they were very thoughtful questions. So I wanted to run through some of those. And Chris and Max, if you want to chime in or perhaps chime in after I go through them, certainly feel free or let me know. So the first question was, how did I get into technology? And I'm kind of laughing because as a member of the board, I'm not nearly as involved on the tech side as either Max or Chris. Really, they're more the tech gurus than I am. But I got into eLivestock Global and ag tech because of my farming background. And I was in a situation where I needed to take over management of my family's dairy farm because of my brother got ill, unfortunately. And I think it was mentioned earlier, I'm in Switzerland and he's in Wisconsin in the United States. So I was managing everything off-site and I had access to certain data. I had access to information about our dairy and information from the creamery and the dairy company. So the day-to-day things I was handling, the paying the bills, the culling the cattle, arranging hoof trimmings, things like that. And I could see what was going on with the milk and the production and the fat counts and the somatic cell counts, but I couldn't see what was going on with the individual cows, how many we had, if they were open, if they'd given birth, their age, anything about it. So when I heard about the technology of eLivestock Global and to be able to capture all the life events of a cow from gate to plate or any livestock at all, I was very excited about it. And that's sort of my story about how I ended up on the board of eLivestock Global. So Chris or Max, did any of you want to add anything about your stories?
Sorry, unmuting. Yeah, I think one of the important things is when we talk about community problems that are being addressed by this technology is we have a lot of projects that go on around the rural smallholder farmer. And we get a lot of results which even Superman couldn't achieve, whereby you have reports coming out of cattle producing 20 liters of milk per day in a rural setting. Reality, not possible. You're only going to do that if you've got dedicated feed, scientific analysis, etc., etc. So you need to have a system that can say the facts on the ground. And this is what we're trying to achieve. It's addressing a problem whereby if we say a community is producing X and it actually isn't, they could be left behind because they say, oh, well, they're doing so well. You know, a little project came in, they're doing well, let's leave them alone. We're going to provide the real data, and that real data will be able to see where are the needs of the community. So it's not just us saying what we think the communities can need. It's also solving a problem whereby the communities can be helped in actual things that they need. Another problem is, and this is a very African problem, which you probably wouldn't have in America, is when a girl gets married, they have what they call a lobola, which is a bride price. And within that bride price, there is a specific female cow that must be given to the mother of this girl. And this cow will, over its life, have lots of calves, etc., etc. But what's significant about this is if, for example, her husband passes away, as in the mother, so the father passes away, his family could come and take all the cattle. And the mother who got this animal as a result of her daughter getting married, that animal would disappear. and it wouldn't be hers anymore because you can bribe a district village headman or something. With a system like this, it's in the system on the blockchain as belonging to her. You have herds and ownership within family units. And so if they run away, if they come and take those animals, she can go to court and we can prove her ownership. And the mandatory sentence for stock theft in Zimbabwe is 9 years in prison. It's solving a very big problem. I just wanted to add that into the mix.
You know, it's interesting that Max brings up that problem, and this is something that I think is so intriguing about technology is different countries have different problems, and different tech can solve solutions in so many different verticals. And Max is bringing up problems from Zimbabwe, and I'm looking at it coming from a food service background, from the supply chain and foodborne illnesses, and how tracking the entire supply chain, if there is an issue with any foodborne illness, which is a global problem, it can be identified and contained much more quickly.
Yeah.
Chris, did you have anything to add?
I agree, and I was going to say that you and I are actually working with FDA on a to be part of a group talking about precision livestock tracing. There's an example I shared recently on LinkedIn where not having good traceability is actually remarkably bad for the environment. Like there was a poultry recall that was 10 million pounds of chicken. If you can narrow those, you don't have to throw. I mean, when it's terrible, the chickens produce all that meat and it just gets thrown away. There's a lot of opportunities. It's really just the tip of the iceberg.
So the next question I had was, what is the most pressing challenge your industry is facing? I don't know if this is the most pressing challenge, but in agriculture, I feel that the disconnected public perspective of agriculture is a huge problem. I feel that so many people don't understand simple agricultural things like seasonal agriculture, and just the disconnect between what really happens on a farm and what happens in the supply chain and what goes into agriculture. So that was one thing that I thought of. Also, there's no differentiation between, when you're reading about agriculture, family farming, the smallholder farms, or corporate farms. You hear a lot about organic and non-organic, but you don't hear about no-till versus till very often, unless you're really embedded in agriculture. Also, farmers are land rich and cash poor, and the costs continue to go up. So the costs versus the earnings, the labor that's involved in it, the cost of seed, the cost of fertilizers, these are all things which are challenges in agriculture today. But that's just my opinion. Chris and Max may have other issues that they find more pressing in the industry today.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with you on that, Melissa. I mean, just take the disconnect. You've got someone sitting in New York having a steak at a restaurant. Do they know where that piece of steak actually came from? You know, there's a lot of talk about methane emissions, about how cattle are bad for the climate. But if you can drill down to the farmer, I mean, the farmer's doing their very best to survive. And I think, you know, if you don't connect the two of them, they don't understand where exactly it's coming from. And it could be a small guy 500 kilometers from me here produces a cow which goes through the system and ends up as a steak in London. And you know, how great is it if people can now say, by eating the steak, I'm directly impacting the life of that guy over there. At the moment, they don't. They just see beef coming through and it's got all these bad things associated with it. But you know, as I say, you know, if you, and I say this, and I'm not saying this very lightly, I really believe this. If the world goes ahead and decimates all the cattle, or says cattle should not be there anymore because of methane emissions and climate control, you're talking about on the African continent, genocidal type statistics of people that will die without their livestock because that is their livelihoods. So we've got to get that connect. The biggest challenge is to get the connect between the guy on the ground who, this is his livelihood. You know, this is what puts food on the table. When his wife is sick, he can pay for her to go to the hospital. When school fees comes around, the wife can sell an animal and pay the school fees. That's where I think the disconnect, the biggest problem within the industry is there's no connection between the producer and the consumer. And that's what we've got to bring to the party.
You know, just based upon what you're saying too, I'm wondering about the future potential threat of a technology, lab-grown meat.
No, it's no. I have looked into this and we've done a lot of work on. I think one, it's far too expensive, and two, meat is meat. I mean, at the end of the day, South Africa,
Right.
interestingly enough, have said you cannot, if it's lab grown, you cannot use the word meat. You cannot use the word sausage if it's lab grown, and that's law. So they've got to sell it as whatever it is they want to sell it as. But you know, the people are saying it's not meat; it's something else. Call it what you may, and I think that's also an important factor.
I hope that's a global adaptation at some juncture. The next
It's
question. Oh, sorry.
But okay, I was just saying Italy have done it as well,
Right.
and Europe. I think France has followed suit most recently. But yeah, there's a big move to say meat is meat. Let's not confuse the issue.
The next question, what's the most exciting aspect of your career? I have to say with my involvement on the eLivestock Global side, besides working with Chris and Max, I would say that it's very exciting learning about other technologies that are out there and seeing how they're being applied, because we've come into contact with a lot of different startups and brushed up against a lot of different technologies. So it's not only exciting the applications of our technology, but also who you come in contact with.
Yeah, agreeing with you. I mean, it's amazing. I get to, in my career and right now as we sit here, I get to sit in boardrooms and discuss cattle at the highest corporate level. I also get to sit under a tree in the scorching sun with a bunch of smallholder farmers and talk to them about their cattle and give them ideas and explain small things to them and help their lives. And, you know, that's, you know, the app assists in that. So it's really brilliant to be able to talk to them and show them, you know, some of these things. I think a lot of our smallholder farmers are very visual. You know, they're not early adopters, but, you know, someone will adopt it. But when they see the benefits, when they see what they can get out of it, they all scramble for it. And that's, you know, having a career that you can actually be able to help people on a daily basis, I think is absolutely brilliant.
Chris, would you like to chime in on this question? What's the most exciting aspect of your career in tech?
I think it's definitely getting to look at the emerging stuff. We're getting ready to pivot towards artificial intelligence, and certainly that's an opportunity and a threat and a challenge all wrapped up into one. So.
And the next question, most challenging aspect of your career in tech. And I didn't really answer this one specifically for tech. I just thought that for people embarking on their careers and starting out with their career management, weighing your passion versus the practical, meaning finances, because you can end up, you know, working for startups or putting a lot of effort into things, but they may not be financially rewarding for you. And then as you move on with your career, you'll get different offers. You'll have different companies interested in you and which company to go with as the offers come in. These are all things with cultivating your career and your future that you'll have to think about. And I think they're they're very interesting. In the tech world, it seems that the wave is on a 9-month circuit. So the wave keeps moving every 9 months, but other industries don't move that quickly. And these are things to consider as you're working and cultivating your career for you working in the future.
Chris, carry on, Chris, if you want to go.
Oh, here, I'm going to pass the mic here to one of our guests who has a question.
Oh, okay.
So Max, when you say cattle, are you projecting as like the crops, or are you just talking about only the animal? Did you hear that, by chance?
Yeah. You said, are we talking about cattle or just cattle, or do we include cropping as well? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at the moment it's livestock. We designed the app for cattle, pigs, sheep, and goats. We haven't activated the goats, sheep, and pigs yet, but it's all pretty much the same format as to how they operate. We do have ideas about crops. I don't know if Chris wants to mention them, or it's still under wraps with regard to warehousing and commodity trading.
Yeah, absolutely. Your question is good in terms of like One Health. You want to think about not just the animal, but the environment it's in. So that was good.
So I think the last question that I'm seeing is, what career advice would you give to people starting out in tech? So my career advice is take a gap year. Okay, I'm kind of joking, but you'll have wins, you'll have losses. People will help you with your career. Learn tech, but also keep learning things completely out of the zone, because somewhere there's going to be a convergence between everything that you learn and the different applications. And with innovation in general, the more parties you have coming to the table, the richer your innovations are. So the more varied your background is, and I think especially with tech, it's very easily to get very focused and very laser focused on one thing. Just keep your mind open, be on Team Human, recognize that, okay, you're starting out in your career. Where's it going to be in 30 years? What will it be like? What will the legislation be like? What will the technology be like? There's so many different ways that the future may develop in technology, and nobody really knows. I heard something yesterday about Amara's law, and I thought it was applicable to the future of technology. And that's Amara's law is overestimating change in the short term and underestimating it in the long term. It seems like people are talking about AI and how it's going to impact everything in life and its potential. And if you think about it, even if you develop the best technology today that's going to do really wonderful things, it's going to take time for it to get adapted. So really, look at the long term and its impact on humans and on Team Human, and how it can impact your future and your career. So that's my 2 cents worth. Chris, any advice to future techies, or Max, any advice for technology of the future?
You want to go, Chris, or? Okay, I'll go. Mine, and this is weird coming from someone in Africa, is change the world. I wish I was doing the kind of stuff we're doing now 30 years ago. If you're in tech, you have the ability to change many people's lives, and it's not about thinking about a small little step that will help the people of this little town, population 2,000. It's about coming up with global ideas, things that are going to move the dial. I was at a conference, a research conference last week, and I've got one of the leading climatologists in my dining room right now, waiting for me to get back to supper. But this climate issue is big. It's not a small thing, and I'm not going to be Mr. Doomsday and saying 2050 we're all going to expire, but it's something that we need to think about, but we need to think about it at a global level. We can't just sit and think, oh, if we do this in the United States or the global north, we have a big planet. And my advice to anyone is, if you're going to be in tech, change the world. Simple. And as I say, I wish I could be doing that 30 years ago. But hey, that's me. Oh,
So
hello.
is everyone seeing the question? There was a question that just came up.
Yeah, I'm seeing it, and I can answer it immediately. So you have different aggregation events. Your main aggregation event is your dipping. So when the animal dips, it is scanned, it is geotagged and everything. But you only dip an animal once a week in the rainy season and once every 2 weeks in the dry season. We're about to go into the rainy season in November, so we'll be dipping once a week at that stage. But you don't only dip for scanning. If you vaccinate that animal, you scan and you record that data. If that animal has an injury, you record that data. The app has the ability to do what we call a stock count. So at the end of the day, the animals are coming back into their crawl where they sleep for the night, for protection and all of that. You can scan them in. The beauty of that scan is that you scan them 300 miles away. And I, sitting in my office, I've got 27 herds on this ranch. Sitting in my office, I can see all the stock takes that have taken place this evening and see how many animals were missing or how many animals were in the wrong herds. So there's a lot of scanning events that take place. And we worked on a minimum 36 scans per year per animal, the absolute minimum. But I can see it, you're probably talking about 100 plus events in a year, once every 3 days, which will then give you that geographical pattern as well, where you can say the animal over 3 years spent its life in that area. Okay, I think I've answered it.
Not everyone could see the question. Anton asked, I heard mentioned that the cows are scanned twice a month at their dipping sessions. What effect, advantage, if any, would come from increasing the number of scanning to 100 or even 1,000 times a month, or a real-time scanning? This question is related to commodity trading and value. So that's what Max just answered.
Sorry.
First of all, I'd like to thank all three of you for sharing your story and information. My question is about the entrepreneurship. So from thought to creating, it started in 2019. How long did it take from the idea to do it? How many employees do you have total? And what percentage of that total is moving forward with the AI and the technology? Let's see. So that's like two questions there. I'm sorry, but just the entrepreneur from thought to creating it, and then how many employees you have.
Actually, it was a funny. I was giving my lightning talk in the summer of 2019, and then we originally worked with MasterCard using their blockchain product, and I had to go in September up to New York and pitch MasterCard on the idea of traceability in livestock. And then I told MasterCard, I said, oh, well, we hadn't set up a company at that point. So I said, we'll have something set up in October. It got to October 31st. So our incorporation date is actually October 31st, because I wanted to, one of the things I say, you're only worth your word. So we incorporated on and there's a little stigma with that. But anyway, we're officially incorporated on 2019. Then we October 31st. Then we started developing. Then we had to find a friendly VC to raise. You got to raise money. And then that was a few more months. We had to find a VC who was interested in Zimbabwe. That was first we had to pitch. We had to sell MasterCard on the idea. Then we had to find a VC that was interested in Zimbabwe. So these were probably longer lifts. Then we had to develop the app. Do you want to answer the rest of the question? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, we started along the route down the app, and as happens, programmers are very very different people. So we weren't making the progress we needed to make. And in our move to nChain, we spoke to them about doing the software, and then they took it over and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, in June last year, they took over the software, and they said, look, we're not going to take somebody else's programming and just tidy it up. We're going to start from scratch. So they started again from scratch in June, and December, we had our first Android version of the app, and January, we had our iOS version of the app. In terms of employees, the beauty of this system is it's like WhatsApp, so to speak. The user controls what they do with it. So with the app, you have your smartphone and you have your scanner, which I don't unfortunately have one on me. The cattle are tagged, and then you have a laptop with a web portal. So, there's not much work needed for me to be running around. Someone can come to me, buy the tags, buy the scanner, and then go off and set themselves up. So in terms of employees, you're looking at 5 to 10, but the beauty of the system and what we're trying to do is not create this thing where you have millions of people sitting behind desks, millions of people running around the area with cars, fuel, cell phones, what have you. One of the greatest things we've been able to do, and it's technology challenges currently facing, wanted to push, is they've allowed Starlink is becoming big within Africa, and it basically is making Africa very penetrable in terms of technology. So that's how we're using it, and we don't need lots of people to sit in the payroll to make it work. I hope that.
Just to add to that, I mean, you can lean scale a tech. I don't like the term lean scale, but you can scale a tech company with very low headcount. Our particularly in Africa, our sales model is more directly to government, so we can actually leverage. If you think about agriculture, they have what's called extension agents, so we can leverage their existing network. So that's the headcount stays with the government. It doesn't come over to us.
Yeah, I think the use of blockchain. So I'm thinking blockchain is a fairly sophisticated technology. Is this almost an overkill for this technology that you're trying to do?
We think blockchain is really good at supply chains. We actually think blockchain is the killer use case for blockchain. We think supply chains is the killer use case for blockchain. You could think about it too, like, you might, it's a little bit, to me, blockchain's always been like the operating system. So the user, to them, it's transparent. You might operate a computer which runs on Microsoft, or if it's an Apple computer, runs on an Apple operating system, but it's transparent to you. You're just using your application. So to us, blockchain is like that. Well, there's different flavors of blockchain. We use one of the leaner, low cost ones. But Bitcoin is gonna get in trouble. Anytime I bag on Bitcoin, Bitcoin is not as energy efficient as some of the other blockchains out there. So.
Just to add on to Chris, sorry, just on the blockchain answer that you've given. This morning I had one of my IT guys on the ranch say to me, "Ooh, there's a few animals where we've made a few mistakes. Can we not just delete them and re-enter them? Start again?" And I said, "No, you can't. It's in the blockchain. You can't delete what's happened. Sorry for that. You have to live with your mistakes." And they can add new animals, but those animals they got wrong, they're having to new tag numbers, explanations, and go through the whole process. You can't just delete.
Thank you. We have one final question in the chat, and then we are going to wrap up. So it is again from Anton. Thank you for your question. As a follow-up, okay, there's another one that popped in. As a follow-up, if you have time, what technology challenges are you currently facing or wanting to push? It's Anton. He has a second question that's completely different. So, well, from the first question. So when exploring Starlink, while the connectivity is an obvious advantage, is it cost competitive for your overall solution? So a question about Starlink and technology challenges.
I can answer the Starlink one now. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no, let me just, I was going to suggest Anton and I know each other, so I'll talk with him separately about the tech, and I think Max would love to talk about Starlink. So here we go, which is what he just jumped.
So with Starlink, okay, in Zimbabwe, my current, so on this ranch, I'm paying $4,000 a month for data connectivity, which is partially a fiber optic cable to the entrance to the ranch on this side, and on the other side, which is non-contiguous, using a VSAT. So that's $4,000 a month. My house in the capital, I am paying $200 a month using fiber. We have very expensive internet in Africa. Starlink has reduced that cost to $30 for a fixed unit. So if I have a Starlink on my roof in Africa, I pay $30 a month, okay? So that's down from the 200. But being the clever person that I think I am, I've bought a roaming package. So I'm paying $100 a month, which is half what I'm paying at home. But I can take that Starlink anywhere in Zimbabwe and then just stick it on the roof of my car and get out there and start, connecting. So the costs have come down considerably. But because of the aggregation of cattle, you don't need every farmer to have a Starlink. So there are 4,500 dip tanks in this country servicing 5 million cattle. If you can find yourself in a situation where you have a Starlink at each dip tank or one Starlink between 3 dip tanks, that cost is negligible. I hope that helps. It's very cost competitive because you're going from, I'm paying $4,700 a month on this ranch. My cost is coming down with Starlink to less than $600-700 a month.
Thank you, Max. Wow, this was an amazing conversation, very thought-provoking for me. I will say one of the things that stood out to me is, of course, I was thinking about the cattle and the blockchain, but Max, you made the connection for me about how this is about women's rights, how this type of technology can protect women, that I had not even thought or considered that. So thank you for sharing that. I'd like to thank all of our guest speakers. Thank you so much for taking the time to educate us about your organization and the very important work that you're doing on a global level. This presentation is being recorded, so hopefully we'll have other guests in the future that can hear and listen and learn about everything that you shared today. I do have thank you gifts. They are over here on the table. Chris will have to, the next time you see him, share the token of appreciation for your time. Again, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're in different time zones, so I really appreciate you, again, making that time to speak with us in Montgomery County, Maryland. So thank you. We have a survey. So my team is going to bring it up shortly. In the link, we'll have a QR code. We do like to get your feedback about this topic. What did you think? Did you like the guest speakers? Did you like the format? And of course, we share this information afterwards with our guest speakers so that they know the impact that they had on all of us. So if everyone can take just a few minutes to fill that out, we greatly appreciate your feedback. And this is our final Future of Tech for October. We're headed to the end of the year. We have November and December left. Our next fireside chat is a local tech company talking about their careers. They have 3 different individuals with different backgrounds who are working in a local tech company. And then in November, we're actually talking about wellness in tech. So we know that there are definitely occupational issues that come up with working in the tech industry. So we're having our Megan Cooperman, who is our wellness expert here at Montgomery College, talking about how can we make sure that we're being healthy and incorporating wellness into our tech careers and experiences. So with that, thank you. Our in-person guests will transition over to lunch. And for our online guests, thank you again for logging on, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.